we are getting some really weird behavior inside of our application when we run it in production mode. So let's take a look at a couple of diagrams and understand what is going on. Okay, so this all comes back to the idea of caching in Next.js. Next has 4 different caching systems. If you're not familiar with caching, that's totally fine. It is a performance optimization meant to reduce the amount of work that our application has to do. Some of these caching systems run when we are developing our application. That's the first 3. So these 3 we've been dealing with behind the scenes, and they haven't really gotten in our way so far just yet, but on our next app, we're going to have to learn a little bit more about them. When we build our application for production, however, this last system comes into play. It's called the full route cache. Let me show you a diagram to help you understand what this full route cache is really doing. Okay, so we ran that command of npm run build. When we run that, Next is going to find all the different routes in our application. One route in particular was the home route. So the home route is the file inside of our app directory page.tsx. Here it is right here. This is our home page, more or less. Whenever this page is rendered, we reach into our database, get all of our snippets, and then render them out onto the screen. So Next finds that route, and then it asks some questions about it. It does a little bit of analysis, and it tries to determine if the route is static or dynamic. We'll discuss what these terms mean in just a moment. But right now, just understand that Next is going to assume that our homepage route is static. Because it is static, Next is going to implement some really aggressive caching on this route. And the default behavior is very inappropriate for the kind of application we are working on right now. So we're going to have to configure this or change the caching configuration a little bit. But for right now, let me just tell you what is currently occurring when we run the npm run build command. Because this route has been determined to be static, Next at build time. So when we run npm run build, it's going to render that homepage component. When it renders that component, we have some code inside there to reach into our database and get all the snippets inside there. So let's imagine we've got snippets 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to fetch those. They're then going to be rendered into an HTML file. This HTML file is then saved to our hard drive. Then, when our application is running in production mode, whenever someone types into their address bar, localhost 3000, and they come to the homepage of our application, they're going to get this exact HTML file that's going to have the exact same 3 snippets listed in it for all time. Right now, we have no mechanism in our application to update this HTML file in production, even as we start to edit or add or delete snippets. And that's why every time we refresh our page, when it's running in production mode, we see the exact same snippets appear on the screen. So the behavior we saw in the last video, where it appeared that a snippet was being deleted, it's not actually being deleted. When we refresh the page, we're just getting this exact same HTML file, but it kind of has a snapshot of our database from when we built our project. So as you can tell, this default caching behavior is super inappropriate for our homepage, because our homepage has some data that is going to change all the time. And that means for a lot of applications you work on, whenever you have a route that is determined to be static, you are probably going to have to configure the caching mechanism, or you're going to end up seeing some stale data when your application is running in production. Okay, so that is our first taste of what's going on here. Now, the next thing we obviously have to kind of figure out is, what does it mean to be static or dynamic? And how exactly are we going to ensure that at some point in time, we either don't do this static HTML file at all, or at least hopefully update it at some point? So that's what we're going to start to figure out in the coming videos.